Hello there.
Hello. Hello, Calvary.
Hey there. Usually we have our son-in-law that is helping us with our easy chair conversations, but we don't tonight. So you are the one who's getting up and
doing
turning
it all.
on. And
I've got to run back around and turn it off.
Yeah. So anyhow, for those of you church family that do not know, we now have a grandson that has been birthed, and he was born on Tuesday at 12:57 p.m. And so that's where Daddy Mike is with Mommy Candace, and they're in the hospital.
Yeah, they're still in the hospital.
And we have given the grandkids, because we're keeping the baby's siblings, and so they have been given orders to stay upstairs and be kind of quiet because we're doing this conversation, this chat. And so anyhow, if you hear something that sounds like, whoa, is that thunder? More than likely it's not. More than likely it's grandchildren upstairs running around.
Or if you hear a scream like somebody killed somebody, probably not killed, but close to it. Somebody almost killed somebody.
The truth is they've been fabulous.
Yes.
They've been great. They're just good kids. And
Well, this is a special week.
absolutely.
It's a special week, of course. It's Easter Sunday coming up. And it's a special week because you realize what we're celebrating is finally the point where God chose to just settle it for mankind. I mean, all this time we've had animals, and all this time we've had these sacrifices, and by the time that the Lord rolls around, it's almost become just a joke. And now the Lord finally says, no, enough. My lamb is going to go to the altar and be sacrificed. And it's finally when God says, enough is enough, it's time. And what's interesting is there will be another time like that when the Lord says, enough is enough, it's time, and we're going to hear a trumpet sound and He's going to come back. But for now, we are celebrating, of course, the crucifixion, and the resurrection is really what we're focusing on. We are not a people that should really focus so much on just keeping Him on the cross. Yes, I am not belittling the death. There had to be a death for the payment of sin. There had to be bloodshed for the remission or forgiveness of sin. And so there had to be a lot of pain, and hell on earth had to be felt for the Lord to go through everything that we would go through, But we can major on that, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, He arose.
Amen.
That's really, because if everything would have happened, but He would have stayed dead, then it really would not have accomplished a thing. But the fact that He arose accomplishes everything. And so it's a very important week. It's a very important time for us as believers of Jesus Christ to realize that, yes, this is really the very zenith of of everything that we believe in.
That's right.
Without the resurrection, let's just forget about it. I mean, let's just put it all away and let's just do whatever, because it happened for once and that's it. It's not eternal. But it's not. We know that He rose. We know that He was seen. And it's interesting because a lot of people don't see or don't know the timeline. And so I want to share it. I want to share the timeline because a lot of folks, so we know, for instance, that the triumphant entry or triumphal entry was Sunday.
Right.
And so we call that Palm Sunday. That was last Sunday. Mm-hmm. And that's about as far as we go. And then, of course, we say, well, there's Friday, and of course there's Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. But what happened in between? What went on Monday through Saturday? So let me share that with you because it's really interesting, okay? So, of course, last Sunday, was the triumphal entry, and He came into Jerusalem. On Monday is when he comes out. Actually, he left Jerusalem, went to Bethany, and he came back into the city. But of course, it wasn't a triumphal entry that time because he was already kind of there. And so at that point in time is when he cleanses the temple, by the way, for the second time in his ministry. One early on and now this one. So he cleanses the temple, and so that happens on Monday. On Tuesday, that's when Judas begins to bargain with the Sanhedrin about how much they'll give him if he points them out, and they strike a deal. And so finally, of course, he'll sell them for 30 pieces of silver. And so that's on Monday. This is going on. On Tuesday. On Tuesday. Let me get that right. On Monday, he cleansed the temple. On Tuesday, because he cleansed the temple, see, the Sanhedrin is pretty well ready to do something with him. And that's when Judas goes ahead and sells him. Now, on Wednesday, the Lord actually prepares for the Passover.
Right.
And so he actually, or what we call the Last Supper, but he actually prepares, so he sends the disciples to go to the upper room and get it ready and kind of separated, and then they're going to talk to the owner and all of that. And so the Last Supper is prepared or set to be prepared on Wednesday. Also on Wednesday is when the Sanhedrin gathers and they begin to think, how are we going to arrest him? What are we going to say? And so now that they've bought him out, now they begin to plan how they're going to capture him. And, they think he's going to run. They think he's going to maybe pull out weapons. And so they strategize how they're going to take his and make his arrest. That's on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, there's a lot that goes on. After sunset is Passover, because after 6,
Right.
it's Passover. And so the first thing that the Lord does is, of course, they gather. The room had already been set aside, and so they gather for the Passover. And the first thing the Lord does is he washes the disciples' feet, and then they go to the table, and they begin the Passover. And so the Passover with the 12, we call it the Last Supper. They're all seated at the table, and so the Passover takes place. And that's when Judas departs. He's going to go ahead and, do his thing. So he departs, and then the Lord institutes the Lord's Supper. From what we read in the Gospels, Judas left before the Lord's Supper took place. And so, that's a question there. And of course, we've got paintings that show him, that don't show him. And really, it's not of any relevance. But the thing is, he leaves during that time. And of course, the Lord's Supper is instituted. They finish the Passover and the Lord's Supper, and then, of course, they go to the garden. So they leave the room, and they go to the Garden of Gethsemane, and that's when he prays. So he's at the Garden of Gethsemane. All this is Thursday. He's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and of course, the betrayal takes place. Judas comes in with members of the Sanhedrin and the temple guards, and so that all happens right there in the garden. And from there, he's taken to the house of the high priest, where they're going to have the first trial. And so the Sanhedrin convenes, and they're in the house of the high priest. Some people say this is around maybe 11 or so. Really, we don't know the time. But the thing is, he is at the house of the high priest. And that's where Peter goes to the house of the high priest. And in the courtyard, he, of course, denies the Lord. And he denies the Lord in that courtyard outside the house. So that's on Thursday. By the time Friday rolls around, there will have been 6 trials that he has had. He's gone back and forth from the high priest to Herod, and then from Herod to Pilate. And, it's gone back and forth and back and forth. And if you count them, there's been 6 trials that have taken place. At that point, after the 6th trial, then Jesus is scourged. So the scourging takes place because they think that that's going to be enough. And of course, for the Jews or the Sanhedrin, that's not enough. And so they present him to the city at this point, and that's when the people say, crucify him, crucify him. And so a lot of them, of course, that have been bought out by the Sanhedrin, but still, they say, crucify him. And then at that point, Jesus is turned over to the Romans to be crucified, because they're the only ones that can crucify him. And so this is all happening on Friday. Then, of course, they put the crown of thorns on his head. And it's also on Friday, from what we see in the Gospels, that Judas hangs himself. So that's end of him. He hangs himself. That's it. And now it's on Friday where Jesus bears the cross. He goes to Golgotha, and he is actually nailed and raised up at 9 a.m. on Friday. So that's now he has officially been crucified, because he's nailed to the cross and he's lifted up, and all they're waiting for now is for him to die. So that he's been crucified at that very point, and that's around 9 in the morning. About 3 in the afternoon is when he finally says it is finished. And so, of course, he dies. The temple, the veil is rent in the temple. We know that the rocks are rent, or the earthquake takes place. Some of the graves are open, and the people rise, and they go into the city of Jerusalem. But he's got to be buried before sundown, which is 6 o'clock, because otherwise he'll be going into the Sabbath. So, which will be Saturday. So this is all Friday still. And so he's taken down, and of course he's put into the tomb and all of that. But that's got to be done before 6 o'clock. Now Saturday, early, very early Saturday morning, and some think that we're already past 6 o'clock, but we're not far into Saturday, is when, according to some archives, some records, that's when Pilate goes ahead and puts the guards on the tomb and seals it. And so that happens on Saturday. And really, on earth, we know there's a lot going on, that the Lord is taking care of. But on earth, Saturday is a very dormant day. Nothing happens on Saturday. The tomb is sealed, the guards are there, and nothing happens. And then, as the Bible says, that very early in the morning, just as Sunday begins to break, so it's dawn. Of course, Sunday started at 6 o'clock on what we call Saturday, but it was as the sun was rising, we know that the Lord comes out of the grave. And he actually makes his appearance on this day, and he makes 5 appearances on Sunday. 5 different appearances happen on Sunday. So that's the little timeline there that we can see all that was going on between last Sunday and this coming Sunday. We watch every day, and we can see all that was going on. And except for really Saturday, there was a lot going on, and I've left a lot out. So, yeah. But that's just a quick overview.
So, on Friday around 9-ish is when Jesus is crucified, is put on the cross and everything. But before that time is when, probably still within what we would still be considering Friday, at some point is when Judas hanged himself.
Yes.
Okay. And then what was the other? Oh yeah, I was thinking too. So then on Friday, so he dies around 3. He has to be taken down from the cross and put in the grave.
They've got 3 hours to work.
By 3 hours. So, before 6 o'clock, he is in the tomb. So from 6 o'clock until sometime early on, what we would say Saturday morning, but on the Sabbath, there are no guards at the tomb yet.
Well, from what we understand by the archives, it was probably right into Saturday.
Okay, so there were a few hours that
the
stone was over, but there was
no guards and it had not been sealed.
The morning, and then that's when all of that.
which is a short time, but you have to realize they were rushing to get him into the tomb, and they had to get him into that tomb before the Sabbath started. And then once the Sabbath starts, then, everybody's got to back away, and they got to get away from cemeteries, because you don't want on the Sabbath day be in the cemetery.
These were Roman soldiers that are going to be standing guard, so the Jewish laws don't mean anything to them.
They don't apply to them, right? The Romans can do anything they want to do. Another thing that's interesting is that a lot of people say, well, it doesn't make sense. The days, 3 days. No. Understand this. You have to, don't take them by 24-hour days. And I think a lot of folks miss that. He arose on the morning of the third day. We know that he arose on the morning of the third day. So you have to realize Friday, that still counts as a day. That's when he's crucified. Saturday, that's a whole day there. And then Sunday is the third day, and he arose the morning of the third day. So, but a lot of people have to think that it has to be complete 24-hour day. No, it does not. It does not. That's not the way that the scholars see it, and it's just not. And so that's when there's the confusion, oh, he died on Wednesday. Oh, he died on Thursday. And that's where the confusion takes place. But that's the timeline right there that it all took place, and it's very interesting to go through it. Like I said, I've left a lot out for the sake of time, but it's an exciting thing to know this is Wednesday now, and all that happened today. And then tomorrow, it's a very important day. We're getting ready for Passover. Right. And, all that is going to take place. And it's just so interesting when you take the story.
When Jesus died and the earthquake, that must have been a frightening thing. I mean, that the earth would have turned dark when it should still be light. That the earthquake, that in itself has got to be, scary. But then graves are opened, and oh my word, there are lives. I was just reading too, and this is part of my Sunday school lesson for this coming week, was that when the Hebrews think about resurrection, there's only one resurrection that they're thinking about, and that is a bodily resurrection. In other words, they're not thinking about some kind of ideological, renewal or rebirth, or no. When it's a resurrection, it's talking about that a physical body was dead, and now a physical body is alive. And so these graves that were opened. These were dead people.
Can you imagine Grandma coming back?
Wow.
Can you imagine if you didn't like the loved one and they came back? Oh, no, not again.
Oh, no. Can you imagine?
Put up with them again.
If your husband had died and now you'd gotten remarried.
I know. It can be funny or it can be really scary. Let me tell you. Here's another thing. For that matter. Here's another thing. Jewish culture and the Jewish thought of Jehovah God was a spirit, which is true. Okay? Now, here's the thing. It was very, very hard to get into this mind of the Hebrew people, the Jewish people, to get into their mind that their God would die.
Right.
See, that's a concept that was so far out, because no, their God they knew was eternal. And how can their God die? And so we always think, oh, well, the hard thing was that God became flesh, And sure, that was a little difficult for them to, but what was really hard was for God to die, because God can't die. And of course, when you really, really think about it, you can figure it out and say, Yeah. God can't die
Right.
because he is eternal, and they knew that.
Right.
But it was the flesh that died. And it's interesting because we as believers, what happens to us? Only the flesh dies.
That's right.
The spirit and the soul keeps going. Not that we are gods, but that we are in Christ. We are in God. And so we have the same thing that happened to Christ happens to us.
That's right.
Now, God did not die. Jesus died. The flesh died. But the thing is that that's the same thing that happens to us.
That's right.
We die. We're buried. But
We're still alive.
we're still alive.
Yeah.
And remember what he said? He said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet
Amen.
shall he live.
Amen.
Oh, we can go on and on, couldn't we? But I think we're almost out of time. So,
Yes.
well, be looking for a very special, and of course, how special can you make it online, right? But a very special service this coming Sunday at 11 o'clock. It'll be on YouTube and Facebook. And Brother Larry has put a lot of special music together, a lot of great things. Brother Larry is tremendous. He's fantastic. He if you know anything, he has done a lot of videoing, and that's his thing. So this was nothing new to him, and he does a lot of editing. Sometimes you guys don't know this, but sometimes when I'm doing the Sunday morning message, if you're in my Sunday school, you do know this. I have to clear my throat, or I have to stop to get water. Believe it or not, that has happened. Brother Larry knows how to edit so that, man, I am good. I am perfect. I never missed a beat. But you know what? Oh, yes, I did. I had to stop for water. But he's just good at that. But anyway, this coming Sunday, 11 o'clock, don't forget it. But you can always watch them. You can watch them all. All right? We love you, and we hope that you're staying safe. We hope that you are healthy, and we don't know when this is going to end, but the Lord does. So you just trust him, and you have a great, great rest of the week, and really enjoy your Resurrection Sunday.
Amen.
You know, I know that we're not going to be able to get together. You know, I can't remember a time in my life, and of course, we weren't always Baptist, and we weren't always like this, but I'm sure even as a child and Catholic, we still went to church on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
So I can't remember when I haven't been in church on Easter. I mean, my goodness, never.
Yeah.
And it was on Easter Sunday that my family went to Calvary back in 1968. So, I mean, it's important to us, a very important time, Easter Sunday. So, but here we are, not in church on Easter Sunday, but the Lord knows. Y'all have a great week.
Yes, have a great one. We love y'all.
We love y'all. Bye-bye.